Serious? They say people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. What made you leave? I had a boss who would scream in my face so often. I started to strategize how I would handle it when she finally hauled off and hit me. She never did, but she did eventually lose her job after being accused of child abuse. I had a boss hit her boss and she kept her job. She got fired a few months later though for sheer incompetence, and this was a white collar trade association. Worked in an agency environment, big clients and big expectations, but we had a fairly small staff for all the projects we took on. Late nights were expected and some nights I barely had time to eat before I had to sleep to go in tomorrow. Me and a few others tried to ask for structural change to get some breathing room between projects. We were always ignored by upper management and my boss. But hey, they get us pizza after a big project, so we can't complain, right? I was tired, frustrated, and felt like I was just a tool for the man. We worked late and never got anything back from the company, so I sent out applications. Found a bigger company with a cool culture. They offered me a gigantic pay raise, plus better benefits. I went to my boss to hand in my resignation. I gave him 2 weeks notice. This is somehow a 30-minute conversation telling me how miserable I'll be at this other company and how good I had it here. I hadn't even mentioned the name of the new company, so I knew he was talking straight BS. I went back to work, thinking I had my 2 weeks confirmed. However, my boss then pulls me back into his office and says he's going to let me go today. Like right now. Get your things and get out. I did so. Never looked back. My new job is great by the way. Better boss, better work, better life. I worked at a job that was going through some issues right before I left. They fired a few different people on the spot that had put in their 2 weeks. When it was my time to go and I had my next job lined up, I simply walked out during lunch on the last day I wanted to be there. Never said a word to them, and when my boss called I simply ignored it. I had been running the restaurant for weekend nights for 3 years. These were not easy shifts. 5 PM 3 AM. Still, I was a night owl and it was my pleasure. I took some days off and went to a hot spring with my now wife. Upon driving home I noticed my leg hurt and within 2 hours was in the hospital for an infection that would take 3 antibiotics at once to deal with. I called in sick 3 days in advance. My AGM told me it was cool, heal up, and that they would cover my shift. They did not. For my first infraction I was put on final warning and 1 step from being fired. After all the years of work, I put in 3 weeks notice the next day. Frick you illegal Pete's. I was laid off because of COVID, but I considered leaving because the HR manager would speak to me about others in the company. She was toxic AF and told me everyone is out for themselves and they are all snakes. She was the only person I didn't like. Is it just me, or are the people who say that everyone is put for themselves to be the people who are put for themselves? Probably the worst boss I ever had was at a McDonald's. We had a younger manager for the first 10 or so months I was there. Then they decided to bring in a second manager from another store. For the first week or so he was fine, until one day one of the 16-year-old girls that usually works drive-thru was put on the grill for no reason. She got grease on her shirt and the manager said she looked like a pig and to clean it or go home. She left crying. The next day another underage kid asked to just get a drink of water after a 3-hour non-stop rush. The kid looked like he was about to pass out. The manager told him no, so he said he'd drink from the sink in the back. He told him if he did that he would send him home. I lost my crap when I heard that. Basically told him to frick off and left. Never went back. I heard that a month later he was fired. One thing any young worker should learn is to stand up for themselves if there is an emergency. I've heard many stories of employees being denied a break after getting burned or something. If you burn your hand or you feel like passing out, don't ask for permission. If they deny you basic health procedures, there is a good case to sue the heck out of them. I was 18 or 19 working my first job. He criticized my lipstick saying that it was an ugly color, recommending that I wore a bright red lip to go with my bright red uniform shirt. He didn't like my choice of all black shoes. He didn't like the way I mopped the floor, taking the mop from me to show me how to properly do it. He even told one of my co-workers that she couldn't wear a sports bra under her uniform. I quit a few days later. Sounds like a creep. My manager hasn't been great pre-COVID. but as soon as our company was forced to shift to mostly WFH, she lost it. She demanded and paid overtime and is of the mindset that WFH is always going to be less productive than working in office, because she says she gets 1/4 of her own work done when WFH. She also volunteered our department as the pilot project to go back into the office when cases were at an all-time high, but she herself was not coming in. In addition, she has demanded higher standards and tighter deadlines amidst the pandemic, and does not support us even when our clients are in the wrong. We have had a lot of our team members leave for better jobs recently and everyone is looking to do the same. I had a job where most of the company went WFH, pre-COVID, but my boss wouldn't let me, so every day I came into an empty office, but they turned off AC and stopped coffee service, so I would sit in the office and sweat. The funny thing was my boss was WFH for years before this. He was a big dong. I left after 6 months of that balls. HR discussing private matters about staff to other staff. She was a disgusting person in general anyway and many other things, but this was the final straw. Awkward. Probably thought she was safe from repercussions, because who are they going to complain to? Currently trying to leave. I'm salary. If I work any amount under 40, she docks it. If I work over 40, I get my salary pay. A few weeks ago I worked 2 days out of the week, then discovered I had been around a COVID positive person and I started developing symptoms. Work sent me home. I got a test and work had me stay home until I got the results 4 days later. Negative. Even though I'm salary, my paycheck showed up hundreds of dollars less than normal and my boss didn't bother to tell me my paycheck would be significantly less. Luckily I went to HR and they told her she couldn't do that. She later called me and apologized saying she didn't know she had to pay me. This, amongst many other terrible things she does, is why I'm trying to get out of there. She later called me and apologized saying she didn't know she had to pay me. Sadly, this is often in truth we didn't know you knew we needed to pay you. It's amazing how many places will just attempt to get away with things like this on the chance the employee doesn't know any better. My best friend and I worked at the same small company, under a horrific boss. Think Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada, but with early onset dementia. My friend got a great new job and gave her notice. In an effort to get her to stay, our boss offered her my job. I don't know why the frick she thought my friend would accept. She knew we were friends. We'd even booked off the same week of holiday to travel together. Of course my friend said no, and I handed in my notice the very next week. And I let her know why. I mean, there were 100 reasons. But I told her that was the straw that broke the camel's back. She had no idea until then that I knew what she'd done, and the look on her face was priceless as she tried to figure out some way to deny it. LOL. The level of no self-awareness there is insane. Great story. I'd kill it with my efficiency scores all quarter, but when the time came for raises I was given an impossible task. When I couldn't complete it, that was the reason cited for not giving me a raise. Our company grew and became more and more profitable because the jobs were getting bigger and bigger, and a lot of us would stay late and work overtime, but hardly anyone was getting raises. If they were, it was a cost of living raise being passed off as a genuine raise, so I figured I could take my skills elsewhere and change careers. The client let slip how much they were paying for me. In 1 month they paid more than my annual salary. I asked my boss for a pay raise and was told there was just no money available. I said I'd give them 6 weeks to find the money and she laughed at me as I wasn't the type to give ultimatums. When I handed my notice in, after securing a better offer from another company, my boss's boss offered me a 50% raise to stay. It's so stupid how commonplace this has become in management. I can't count how many co-workers I've lost because they were asking for a raise for years, never got one, then get offered the raise they were asking for when they hand in their resignation. By that point, you've burnt any trust or goodwill they have for you and your raise is most likely just matching the compensation they've been offered. I work home care. My boss is typically the family I work for. It's always the families that are the reason I leave, never my clients. Families are the worst. The one that sticks out the most is a mom who got off at me because I planned on taking a week off. I had worked for her for 5 years taking care of her very handicapped child. I don't get paid if I take time off, so I had planned accordingly. She told me that I needed to make that time up. That she had no idea what she was going to do with her child while I was gone. I was one of 3-4 homemaids. She had plenty of help. I told her I did not need to make any time up. I don't get paid for not being there, so it wasn't my problem, and I guess she would have to take care of her own kid. She didn't like that answer. I went on my vacation and decided I had had enough of her, so I quit. I felt bad for the kid. Wasn't a bad kid at all. Spoiled rotten because of all the issues, but otherwise a decent kid. But I could not take that mom anymore. After a week or two got new case, moved on with my life. But it's always the families that I hate, never the clients. I have had some of the absolute best clients. Then it's just a matter of if I'm willing to tolerate their family. I hear it's the same for teachers. Kids are great, even the little shoots, but the parents are the worst. I don't know if I left any one person so much as a toxic overall culture that owned our very souls. Nobody ever received a positive comment in evaluations ever. That question got raised in a meeting once. Do you think we could say something nice about somebody just once? That was met with the immediate response of, that's not what we're here for. I resisted all of this for 5 long years, but the right people who held years-long grudges against me personally rose up to the right positions to put together a case that would get me railroaded out. Fortunately, my direct report clued me in as to what was going down, so I was able to interview and get another job before the hammer came down. They were gonna drag me in on a Tuesday at 11 o'clock. I got the other job offer at 9. I preemptively turned in a resignation that said nothing more than, I resign my position effective XXXXXXXX. I also refused an exit interview and presented state and federal statute that showed I was not required to give one. Even though they so badly wanted me gone, they were pissed that I'd beaten them to the punch. Reality was they wanted to put me on a setup to fail PIP so they could exploit my expertise through the summer season. Instead, I handed them a post-dated resignation, knowing they would immediately throw me out of the building, and that they would have to pay me through the effective date, which also got me my annual profit sharing distribution. Now I'm in a job with far fewer hours, making more money, with co-workers that I actually like, and the old company laid off 10% of their employees, and slashed the compensation of those who remain by 30%. Good, frick them. I like your date on the letter. I freaking love that an employer wants a 2-week notice but will fire you immediately, never giving you a 2-week notice to find new employment. When a recruiter cold called me and said, oh, you work at X, I'm sure we can get you at least a 10% raise somewhere else. I started looking around and got a 27% raise a month later. 5 years at the new place and I make about 66% more than I did when I left the previous job that I was at for almost 5 years. Keep an eye on places like Glassdoor. Know what you are worth. Don't work for a discount unless there is a really good reason. I left Journeys because everyone except me came down with COVID and I was a new hire, but instead of finding people to come work and train me or shut the store down, they just said I had to do it all alone, so I left. I'm all for being thrown to the wolves if I have the knowledge to handle it, but not when I can't even do returns yet, lol. Being called into my manager's office to be coached because I missed 1 day of work in a 2-month time span to attend my aunt's funeral. The first thing the manager said was, I would have done the same thing. She then proceeded to have me sign paperwork instructing how to avoid absenteeism to put in my work record. That day I decided to nope the heck out of there. My boss was fine. The company was terrible. When I realized I didn't have a pension and could get one at a competitor, I booted. Changed the commission structure mid-month and did not update sales staff on the new goals. I missed my commission of $3,800 by $4. Was under the impression that I was $500 over my goals, so I'll let junior sales reps take sales to get them over their goals too, to qualify us for a site-wide bonus. Turns out they scrapped that too in the new structure. Lost 4 reps in a day over $6K in commissions. Company ended up sending most of the senior staff to prison on tax evasion charges soon after we left. Well, that sucks. Well, ooh. She gave off this cheerful, friendly appearance but over time realized she was immature, passive-aggressive, gossipy, and condescending. It was a shame because the workplace itself was great, but she brought the mood down and the rest of the staff hated her. You got an umbrage. A now former colleague and I both applied for a more senior position that had become vacant. I had vastly more experience, having had a similar role in the past. I was better qualified and frankly, a better fit for the job. Even prior to interview, the senior management had already decided they wanted to offer my colleague the position. Unfortunately, nepotism prevailed and the level of smugness I had to deal with was bad enough. But then they decided to treat me like an idiot child for the next year, rather than the experienced professional that I am. I decided to get the heck out after about 6 months. Secured a much better job with higher pay and working conditions. I gave my required 90 days notice. My former colleague manager was so good at their job that they didn't even advertise my job until it suddenly occurred to them that I was due to leave in 2 weeks' time. No one was appointed to my position and the manager tried to offload my duties onto one of my team, who promptly burned out and resigned due to the workload. The rest of the team resigned for better opportunities elsewhere and my former boss left 6 months later under a very dark cloud. Karma is a B. TL. DR. Boss does everything to make his employees hate him and then expects us to still want to work there. I've worked at my current job for over a year and a half. The reason I'm leaving is because I've worked my butt off for them in the one moment I was trained for. I mean like 5+ months of training they gave to their daughter ASAP. I also found out that I almost wasn't given my raise because the boss deemed my behavior as inappropriate, all from little things she could have corrected right on the spot. Like moving a box with my hands instead of using my knees, on top of the being called out in front of all staff. Being told consistently that all the workers are replaceable. Passive-aggressive comments even during a simple request. Letting your family members get away with things I would get in trouble for and saying they won't go anywhere while dwindling your work because they think you'll quit ASAP. Making our last floor manager quit because they put so much stress on her. Coming in when your wife has COVID. Telling employees that if you don't have symptoms that they need to come into work even though most customers are older people. And basically being yelled at least weekly will really make your employees hate you. It was a smallish company, less than 40 employees. My boss encouraged inter-departmental fights with others' departments, and when I refused to participate, my team ghosted me. I went to the CEO indirectly a few times, finally lost my patience, scheduled a one-on-one with the CEO and told him he was running a shitshow, and if he didn't take actions A, B, and C fast, the company would fail, but I'd be gone long before. 3 weeks later they walked me out. A year later, they walked the CEO out. 2 days off for the birth of my first child and a retoupe the day I returned because my wife had been in labor too long. They fired her for being pregnant. That's probably illegal. Had not one boss, but 3. Each would tell me how they wanted something done, and each would tell me that the other 2 were wrong. Finally got sick of getting my butt chewed all day every day for doing what I was told. Finally caught the 3 of them together, talking with the owner, politely interrupted, and pointed out what was going on. You 1. Tell me how to do something. You 2 and 3. 2 say it's wrong. You 2. Tell me how to do something. You 1 and 3. 2 say it's wrong. You 3. Tell me how to do something. You 1 and 2. 2 say it's wrong. And all of you chew my butt for it. Which of the 3 of you do I listen to? They stood there looking at each other, with the owner looking at the 3 of them. After a full minute I took off my work gloves, handed them to the owner, thanked him for employing me and quit. I heard from another employee that all 3 were later demoted, and the owner promoted other people to the positions, with better defined areas of control. Love your bravery. Worked for a business for 3 years. Had a great relationship and reputation. The manager I worked with gets promoted and a new guy is brought in. Instead of trying to learn the dynamic on the department, he was a hard butt. Immediately we did not get along. I had a trip planned for a few months. I booked the time off well in advance and made the managers aware of the trip. Checked my schedule for the week and new guy scheduled me. I approached him and reminded him about my trip. He basically told me that I had to work now that the schedule was posted. I was not pleased. I went on my trip. He called and asked why I wasn't at my shift. I told him that I was on my trip and wasn't available. He threatened me with a write-up. I just straight up told him that I didn't give a crap and that's the way the cookie crumbles. I never went back. I'm a teacher and I worked at a school that was in a very tough neighborhood. Most of my students had never been out of the neighborhood. We had to know which kids were in which gangs to not sit them near each other. Fights happened pretty regularly. Drug deals were frequent. There was definitely behavioral issues, but there were also a lot of really good kids just trying to go to school. The principal was on a power trip. She was a bully to kids, teachers and parents. My first year there, and as a teacher there were 4 of us that taught that grade level. Year starts in August. By October, one of the 4 was quietly dismissed for inappropriate contact with a student. By early December, another of the 4 had her skull cracked open on a locker while trying to help break up a fight. That left 2 of us and a constant rotation of subs because the principal would not hire permanent replacements. A majority of the time a sub wouldn't show up and the students would be split among myself and the remaining teacher. There were all over 40 days when I'd have 45 plus kids in my classroom. I struggled, to say the least. I also got no support from admin. At my end of the year evaluation, my principal said I struggled. No crap, I was drowning. But that I could have taken more professional development to help. WTF. Every faculty meeting was filled with everything we were doing wrong. Never anything positive. The principal took away everything positive. Kids normally had to wear khakis or dockers and polos but could wear jeans on Fridays. Same with staff. She stopped that. She stopped pep rallies. She cancelled all dances. Anything that could be positive to encourage kids, she got rid of. 3 years my students wrote her a letter to ask why she took away the 8th grade dance from everyone and why not just exclude the kids that caused the problems instead of punishing everyone. They asked me to give her the letter because they were afraid of her. She refused to take it from me and said that they, the students, needed to give it to her. I stuck it out for 3 years, but by the end of my 3rd year, I had already made my decision. I was leaving. As much as I would miss my students. Then a murder happened on campus that really cemented my decision. Crap, that escalated a lot at the end. A new hire didn't show up for their shift, freaking us over. They showed up 3 hours later and just stood there and didn't help up get caught up. Me and the other staffer stayed late to prep the next shift and clean. We told him to get us if he needed help and told him we were on the other side doing duties. He crashed, burnt, and never came to get us. Our manager is a sexist butthole and sided with him and took our shifts away for 5 weeks before I just quit after being there for 8 years. This was the same butthole who told me I tried too hard to be a good employee and got mad at me for working off the clock because my co-worker was getting annihilated, couldn't keep up, and needed the help. He threw his keys at me, punched the ice machine, and made that poor girl suffer the rest of the night. This is also the same manager who asked girls if they were wearing panties and rated their bodies. The same one who was banned from a different location for being belligerently drunk. And the same one who asked why our other manager would hire a fat girl. So yeah, great person to work for. Favoritism towards the terrible employees that never did their job or did their job poorly, sloppy, minimal effort. I guess you can be a crappy employee as you like to go out and get drunk with the boss. I worked at a movie theater and had the same issue. They let the favorite employees go early. They were supposed to clean the popcorn poppers, but the manager asked me to do it instead. When I asked why, they said it's because I do a better job. So I had to do their job on top of mine. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.